Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission here is to take complicated, emotionally charged source material, court records, legal depositions, personal journals, and really extract the essential human insights from them.
And today we are wading into one of the most agonizing moral dilemmas you can imagine.
We really are. We're looking at what happens when a child's very existence is defined not by love or by chance, but by someone else's medical necessity.
We're dissecting the journey of the Fitzgerald family, and we're focusing on this high-stakes battle for bodily autonomy that was led by a 13-year-old girl named Anna Fitzgerald.
And the sources are very clear on this. She was conceived through pre-implantation genetic diagnosis.
Right, specifically to be a perfect biological match for her older sister Kate, who has acute promyelocytic leukemia, or APL.
It's a devastating premise right from the start. I mean, it immediately sets up this incredible conflict between, that fierce protective love of a parent.
That instinct.
And the fundamental, really the unalienable right of a child to their own self-determination.
Exactly. We're looking at a story where an illness didn't just affect the patient, it acted as this crucible. And it redefined every single relationship. It challenged the basic assumptions of what it means to be a parent, what kinship even is.
Precisely. So our deep dive today is focused on uncovering how this extreme circumstance, creating a savior sibling, how that played out legally, ethically, and, personally for everyone involved.
We want to understand the psychological cost of being a so-called designer daughter.
And what happens, what's the fallout when that daughter finally looks at her family and says, no more? Okay, so let's start there. Let's unpack this enormous concept of a conditional existence, starting with Anna's fundamental identity crisis.
The sources make it so clear that Anna internalized this purpose from a very, very young age. This wasn't a normal sibling bond, not at all.
Right.
She articulated this feeling that, it's something many adults would struggle to process. The feeling that her arrival was an act of precision, not spontaneity.
And that distinction is really key, isn't it? She reflected on it saying, I didn't get here by accident. She wasn't an oops baby or even, a product of simple desire.
She actually contrasts her own conception with how she imagines other babies are born. She says most are born by accident or because they drink too much on a certain night. But for her, she always knew the meticulous medical reason she existed.
And that awareness carries this just terrifying psychological burden.
Yeah.
The chilling consequence of a conditional existence.
It is chilling. Because she knew her utility, her usefulness, determined her worth. The source material captures her anxiety perfectly. She says, if your parents have you for a reason, then that reason better exist. Because once it's gone, so are you.
Wow. Let's pause on that for a second. That is utterly heartbreaking.
It is.
To feel that your fundamental value, your place in your own family, is tied to your ability to serve a medical function. It means that every act of donation isn't really an act of love.
No, it's a payment.
It's a payment toward your continued inclusion in the family unit.
It creates this almost existential terror.
Yeah.
You have to ask, if Kate were to recover completely and never need another treatment, or, on the other hand, if Kate died, where would Anna fit?
Where does she belong then?
She wasn't seen primarily as Anna. She was a medical means to an end. This is a level of psychological pressure that, very few children could ever even imagine, let alone experience.
And the medical history and the sources, it confirms this wasn't just a philosophical worry. This was her physical reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Anna was not just a standby donor. We have a detailed history of continuous utility that began almost immediately after she was born.
Right. The notion that she only had one procedure years ago is completely false. It started with the first really significant intervention, a bone marrow harvest, when she was 6 years old. At age 6. And her body from that point on was treated as a constantly available resource. But the sources, they go deeper than just bone marrow. She had donor lymphocyte infusions, or DLI.
And what is that exactly? What does a DLI entail?
It's where they collect T cells, a type of white blood cell, from the donor's blood, from Anna's blood, and infuse them into the recipient, into Kate.
So why is that continuous collection so important to understand here?
It speaks to the chronic nature of Kate's fight. APL is aggressive. DLI is often used to fight relapses. So it's essentially restarting the graft versus leukemia effect. It's not a one-and-done thing.
Okay.
But on top of that, they also needed granulocytes, which are other specific white blood cells. And they collected those to fight infections whenever Kate's immune system was compromised from chemo.
So there's DLI, there's granulocytes.
Then there were stem cells and just countless blood draws her entire life. It's an ongoing physical taxation. Anna's body was constantly either preparing for, undergoing, or recovering from a medical procedure geared towards someone else's survival.
So we're not talking about a single heroic act when she was a little kid.
Not at all.
We're talking about years and years of being poked and prodded and put under anesthesia, often with really invasive procedures to extract these life-saving components. And this routine, this medical schedule, it completely dictated her personal life.
That's the cost of existence here.
Yeah.
And the sources offer this really potent symbol of this sacrifice.
A locket.
The locket, yes.
This detail, when you read it, it completely changes the emotional calculus of the whole story.
It really does.
Her father, Brian, he gave her this locket when she was 6, right after that very first major bone marrow harvest.
And he told her, anyone giving her sister such a major present deserved one of her own. It was. It was this physical symbol of acknowledgement.
It was the one piece of evidence she had that her contribution was actually seen, that it was valued.
And she wore it constantly for 7 years. But then, when she makes this profound decision to hire a lawyer, to fight for her own body, that symbol, it becomes a commodity.
She needs money. And the sources, they show her total savings were just pathetically meager.
It was only $136.87.
So she attempts to sell the locket at a pawn shop, and the exchange is just so raw. She tries to exaggerate its worth, saying it's 14-karat gold and hardly ever worn, even though the sources say she never took it off.
And the pawn shop owner offers her a paltry $20.
This scene, it just perfectly encapsulates her desperation, doesn't it? She is liquidating the one tangible representation of her familial worth just to gain the means to fight for her freedom.
She is literally selling her past identity to afford a future autonomy.
It's a powerful metaphor for the social and psychological sacrifice she'd been enduring her whole life. Her life wasn't just medically compromised, it was permanently on hold.
She felt she was, in her words, merely a collection of recessive genes compared to her siblings, who at least visually resemble one parent or the other. She felt like she didn't even have her own physical identity.
And she lost her individual pursuits, her sense of self outside of that role of donor.
The sources noted her passion for hockey, specifically playing goalie, which, is a position that requires absolute focus and physical confrontation.
And she had to abandon it. Why? Why couldn't she keep playing hockey?
Because as she got older, her coach became less and less tolerant of her frequent absences. She couldn't commit to practice, she couldn't commit to games, because she had to be available for Kate's blood draws or checkups or emergency needs at a moment's notice.
So the demands of the illness, filtered through her parents' singular focus, just systematically stripped away her personal interests and any community involvement she might have had.
And the result of that isolation.
She admitted she only ever truly talked to Kate. She called Kate her only friend.
Which is the ultimate irony, right? The person she is legally fighting to escape being used by is also her deepest emotional tether. They are codependent victims of the same disease.
It really highlights the complexity here. This isn't a story of pure hatred or, simple rebellion. Anna deeply loves her sister.
Of course.
Which makes her fight for autonomy all the more difficult and painful. She is fighting for the right to control her own body, even if she knows that choice will cause pain to the person she cares about most in the world.
And that's what ultimately drives her to the courthouse. She files the petition for medical emancipation.
Okay, let's define this very clearly for you. What exactly was she trying to achieve by seeking emancipation? This isn't what people normally think of.
Right, she wasn't seeking general adulthood or financial independence, which is what emancipation usually implies. This was a very specific, almost surgical legal remedy.
And what was that?
She sought the legal right to make all of her own future medical decisions, and critically, to refuse treatments, specifically the proposed kidney donation, which, in the words of the petition, was not in her best interests or for her benefit.
Okay, let's talk about the kidney donation, because this is the medical escalation that really served as the catalyst for the lawsuit. Why did Kate suddenly need a kidney?
Well, the APL and the years of aggressive chemotherapy required to treat it had caused end-stage renal failure in Kate, so her kidneys were failing.
So the kidney donation wasn't a preventative measure anymore?
No, it was an urgent necessity to keep Kate alive. It was a terminal symptom of her years and years of treatment.
And Anna understood this was the tipping point. The previous procedures, as invasive as they were, didn't permanently compromise her own long-term health in the same way.
That's the crucial distinction. Anna realized that giving them her kidney would permanently compromise her own future health. The long-term risks are significant. increased hypertension, potential complications during pregnancy,
And the absolute necessity of avoiding all contact sports for the rest of her life to protect her single remaining kidney.
exactly. So she would be giving up her future health, her dreams, permanently, for what was likely just a temporary fix for Kate.
She saw the cost, and she realized the cost was her entire future life narrative.
Exactly. She was fighting not just for her body, but for her ability to define herself outside of Kate's illness. And that realization, combined with her meager savings, is what forced her into that pawn shop to sell the one thing that symbolized her forced inclusion.
Now we have to move beyond Anna and look at the family unit itself, because Kate's illness, it didn't just twist Anna's identity. It acted like this gravitational force on every single member, warping their roles and their relationships. Let's start with Sarah, the mother.
Sarah is the definition of a force of nature in these sources. And it's critical to remember she's a former lawyer. She takes that intense, intellectual, you could say argumentative, energy and channels it entirely into Kate's survival. Her focus is absolute. It's almost monomaniacal.
She's operating under this deeply held and maybe biologically programmed belief that a parent's duty to save a sick child just transcends all other ethical concerns.
Yes, and the sources capture her self-justification for using Anna so perfect.
The burning building analogy.
The burning building, yes. It's incredibly powerful and, frankly, horrifying. She argues that a parent is obligated to run into that burning building to save their child, even if it comes at the expense of others.
So for Sarah, the ethical compromise of coercing Anna was what? A minor sin?
A minor sin compared to the absolute catastrophe of losing Kate. That's how she saw it.
But wait, let me push back on that for a second. Isn't Sarah just doing what any parent is sort of biologically programmed to do? To save their child at any cost? Do the sources ever offer a critique of that instinct versus her legal duty to Anna?
That's a great question. And the material shows that while her love is fierce and unquestionable, her actions become legally and ethically corrosive. Her instinct has completely overridden her ability to recognize Anna as an individual with rights.
So her lawyerly background, it helps her rationalize it.
It allows her to rationalize the coercion as necessary triage. She essentially argues, I love both my daughters, but one will die without intervention and the other will merely be inconvenienced. It's a cold, hard calculation for her.
And this ferocious determination creates this enormous, and you said it, frankly dangerous blind spot when it comes to Anna. She cannot, or maybe she refuses to, acknowledge Anna's distress.
She needs Anna to be compliant. She needs Anna to be the superhero her psychiatrist claimed she was.
Right.
There's a moment when Brian, her husband, asks her pointedly if something is wrong with their youngest daughter. And Sarah's response is to instantly minimize it.
She offers that chilling, dismissive comparison.
She does. She says, compared to Kate's kidneys and Jesse's sociopathy, I'd say she's doing fine.
That is the core of her failure right there. It's a lie of omission. She had to avoid confronting the reality of the lawsuit and Anna's pain just to maintain the moral authority she felt she needed to keep fighting for Kate.
It's a self-preservation mechanism for her as a mother. If she acknowledged the true cost to Anna, her entire worldview and her ability to keep fighting would completely collapse.
So she focuses on the external, on the medical fight.
And minimizes the internal psychological damage she's causing to her other daughter.
Okay, so if Sarah is the fire, then Brian, the father, he's the conflated, complex attempt at containment. Professionally, he's a firefighter and a paramedic. He runs toward crises. But at home, he's just paralyzed by the moral compromises he has to live with every day.
Brian's professional life provides this profound counterpoint to Sarah's denial. He sees death and medical trauma on a daily basis. He understands mortality, which allows him to process the inevitable differently than Sarah, who is focused solely on delay and cure.
And his internal parental conflict. It's most visible in the financial lie he tells Sarah. He's caught between his wife's relentless drive and his own moral awareness of Anna's sacrifice.
That's right. He reveals he had used Kate's college fund, all of it, $8,369.56, along with donations from the fire station, to cover transplant costs that insurance wouldn't touch.
And when Sarah confronts him about this, about betraying their financial planning for the future, his justification is just brutal.
And heartbreaking. He says Kate, she's not going to live long enough to use that money for college.
That one quote just sums up the family's entire existence, doesn't it? The future, represented by the college fund, is sacrificed completely for the present desperate need.
And Brian, who is unable to really articulate his moral discomfort with Sarah, uses subtlety to communicate with Anna.
This brings us to the Andromeda connection. This is one of the most poignant details in the sources.
It really is. Anna's full name is Andromeda. And Brian, who is a closet astronomer, uses this Greek myth to communicate his silent moral conflict to his daughter.
And just remind us of the myth.
Andromeda was a princess who was shackled to a rock as a sacrifice to a sea monster, all because of her mother's vanity.
Wow.
And Brian subtly draws Anna's attention to the constellation in the night sky, describing her with her arms outstretched and her hands chained. It's his way of saying, I see you. I know you were being sacrificed for our family's great crisis.
So he acknowledges her pain.
But without directly confronting Sarah, which demonstrates his passive complicity in the whole thing.
So we have the fiery mother, the morally compromised father, and then we have the invisible sibling, Jesse. His rage, his antisocial behavior stealing, hood ornaments, the arson, the drinking, it all seems like a desperate attempt to just be seen.
Jesse felt completely and totally irrelevant. The illness created a dynamic where only two people mattered, the sick child and the savior child.
And he described himself how?
He said he felt like a squirrel living in the elephant cage, utterly overshadowed by the enormous medical drama unfolding around him.
And his acting out, his delinquency, it's a cry for attention, isn't it? A desperate attempt to create a crisis that's large enough to pull the spotlight away from Kate for just one moment.
He's searching for power. He confesses to Brian that he couldn't save Kate, implying that his destructive actions stemmed from this deep sense of powerlessness and helplessness against the disease that ruled their home.
If he can't save Kate, maybe he can at least destroy something else and feel momentarily important.
Right. But Jesse holds this incredibly important piece of insight about Anna, which shows he isn't just a troubled teenager. He understands the family dynamics better than anyone.
What does he say?
He tells Giulio Romano that Anna is on their radar because she plays into their grand plan for Kate. Jesse understands that Anna is defined by her usefulness, just as he is defined by his uselessness in the fight against cancer.
He knows the family's attention is conditional.
He knows, and Anna's only getting that attention because she's a commodity.
Which brings us finally to Kate, the patient. She's the gravitational center of all this pain. The sources paint this picture of physical decline. Fading color, lash-bare eyes, the scars from her Hickman catheter.
Yet, she retains this incredibly sharp, dark humor.
Joking about celebrity boxing.
Exactly. It's a psychological defense mechanism. It allows her to maintain some measure of control and normalcy against the brutal physical reality of her disease. She is suffering profoundly, but she is still a teenager trying to live.
But what's fascinating, and something the critique really demanded we spend more time on, is the core connection between the sisters and how Kate's own agency plays into this lawsuit.
That's right. The sources confirm they were deeply codependent. Kate called Anna her only friend, which just reinforces Anna's social isolation.
But the real turning point, it comes when Kate is hospitalized in extreme distress, and she silently mouths an instruction to Jesse.
She says, "Tell Anna."
And that detail, it hints that Kate isn't just a passive recipient of all this treatment. She has a hidden desire, a secret plan of her own.
Exactly. This is the first real clue that Kate is fighting to stop the treatments herself. She recognizes the toll they're taking on her body and on her family.
And the sources later reveal she had already tried to stop the treatments on her own, even before Anna filed the lawsuit.
She was fighting for the right to die. And Anna's emancipation petition became her last hope for peace.
So Anna's petition wasn't a sudden, selfish act of teenage rebellion.
Not at all.
It was potentially an act of profound love, fulfilling her sister's own silent wish.
It reframes the entire legal battle. It moves it from a question of sisterly jealousy to an issue of co-conspiracy driven by mutual compassion. Kate was giving Anna the permission she needed to fight, and Anna was fighting for Kate's dignity, not just for her own freedom.
This emotional furnace then leads us directly into the courtroom, where these arguments transition from raw emotion to, codified law. And the core conflict is now about the right of a minor to reject parental medical direction.
Which is a massive legal precedent.
Absolutely. So let's clearly define what medical emancipation means for a 13-year-old.
It means the court is terminating the parents' rights, but only regarding that specific area medical decisions. It allows the minor to consent to, or crucially, to refuse treatment.
And this is incredibly rare.
Very rare and legally complex because judges typically favor parental authority. They assume parents are acting in the child's best interest.
Anna's choice of legal representation is key to the high-stakes nature of this case. Campbell Alexander. He's controversial, known for being extremely cocky and successful.
Campbell has a reputation for taking on impossible cases. He's famously known for having sued God, though the sources clarified this was actually him suing the Diocese of Providence on behalf of a child, needing an experimental fetal tissue treatment that the diocese opposed.
He thrives on controversy and winning.
He does. But let's pause on his initial reaction to Anna. He was completely dismissive of her at first, wasn't he?
He was. He thought she was coming to him with standard teenage problems, suggesting she needed Planned Parenthood for birth control or something.
But when Anna, who was highly articulate and medically knowledgeable, clearly stated her objective to stop the kidney donation by seeking emancipation, he was immediately intrigued. He realized the depth of the legal and ethical implications, and he filed the petition immediately.
What's fascinating here is that the sources reveal that Campbell, this outwardly slick and successful advocate, is hiding a profound vulnerability himself.
He has epilepsy, and this is a critical parallel to the Fitzgerald family dynamics. Everyone in this drama is hiding a vulnerability that defines their actions.
So when was he diagnosed?
After a car accident, right before his graduation from Wheeler Academy, and he relies on his service dog, Judge, to alert him to oncoming seizures.
And he goes to these extraordinary lengths to hide this, using all these elaborate, frankly ridiculous excuses for why he has the dog with him all the time.
Absolutely. He fabricates multiple reasons. He claims he's colorblind, or he's a recovering alcoholic, or he has SARS. It's almost comical.
But why this intense secrecy?
Because he believes that showing any physical or mental impairment makes him a freak. He pulled away from everyone, including his then-girlfriend Julia, immediately after the diagnosis, just determined to maintain this facade of invincibility.
So that theme of conditional existence, it just runs so deep.
It does.
Anna believes her value is conditional on her health and her utility. Campbell believes his professional value is conditional on his appearance of perfect health.
It shows that even the most aggressive, successful people are often defined by their deepest vulnerabilities. Campbell's need for control mirrors Sarah's need for control over Kate's life. They both fear the consequences of imperfection.
And speaking of Julia, she enters the courtroom drama as the opposing counsel.
Right. She's representing Kate's interest, though arguably she's really representing Sarah's interpretation of Kate's interest.
And Julia is Sarah's estranged sister, and critically, Campbell's former love interest.
And this injection of personal drama into the legal fight is just explosive. Julia and Campbell have a history defined by this painful, abrupt split caused by Campbell's seizure incident. So their professional battle is complicated by this instant emotional tension when they reunite.
The sources describe how quickly their bodies remember where to go, despite the intervening years and Julia's own current relationship issues.
And this old pain allows Campbell to use manipulative tactics in the courtroom. He leverages his knowledge of Sarah and Julia's family history.
Oh, so?
He threatens a restraining order to remove Sarah from the house. He argues it's necessary to protect Anna from parental prejudice and coercion during the trial.
Which is a brilliant, if manipulative, move.
It is. He isolates Anna to ensure her testimony is untainted by Sarah's intense, overwhelming influence.
The courtroom clash eventually distills down to these conflicting expert testimonies on the ethics of donation. This is where the ethical analysis gets extremely complicated.
It does. The family's psychiatrist, Dr. No, argues passionately that donating a kidney would provide immense psychological benefit to Anna.
He paints a very rosy and I would say almost disturbing picture.
He does. He claims the donation would increase Anna's self-esteem, that it would confirm her place in the intact family. He even goes so far as to call her a superhero.
So the core of his argument is that the trauma of losing Kate because Anna refused the donation would be far worse for Anna's mental health than the physical sacrifice.
Exactly. But if you pause on that testimony is incredibly problematic ethically.
It is. It assigns a child's self-worth, her self-esteem to her medical utility to the family unit.
It institutionalizes the concept of conditional existence. Anna must perform the role of savior to feel psychologically intact.
But Campbell, using his characteristic precision, skillfully uses cross-examination to just dismantle that superhero narrative.
He fights the emotional argument with cold clinical facts, citing specific medical records from Dr. Chance.
He highlights the specific, non-trivial, long-term risks to Anna from the kidney donation. This is where the legal argument really gains traction because he proves the donation is not benign.
And the risks are substantial. Increased chance of hypertension, potential complications during pregnancy.
And the necessity of avoiding contact sports forever. Campbell zeroes in on the consequence that hits Anna closest to home. The necessity of giving up hockey, the one thing she loved that defined her outside of the family crisis.
He uses her love for hockey as a clear, tangible consequence. He demonstrates that the donation is fundamentally detrimental to her best interests and her future dreams. He is proving that the kidney donation is a permanent sacrifice that outweighs the dubious psychological benefit of being called a superhero.
And this entire legal process, it forces Anna to realize that she must break free to pursue her own aspirations.
Aspirations she had been censoring since she was conceived.
She starts listing her dreams. Oceanography in Hawaii, skydiving, moving to Prague. These aren't just idle fantasies.
No, they are goals that require a healthy, uncompromised body. And she describes her attempt to picture herself pursuing those dreams as, and this is a quote, wearing a size 5 sneaker when your foot is a 7. You can get by for a few steps, and then you sit down and pull off the shoe because it just plain hurts too much.
The pain of being constrained by her role finally outweighs the fear of disappointing her family. Her desire for emancipation is the realization that if her existence remains conditional, she can never truly live her life.
She will always be a means, never an end.
Which leads us to the most dramatic sequence in the source material, the moment Anna confronts her mother in the courtroom.
The conditional existence just breaks down completely. Anna has made her choice.
She walks over and whispers the true, agonizing decision into her mother's ear. I can't.
And Sarah, who has dedicated years of her life to this fight, is just utterly broken by this refusal. It's the moment the unconditional love she believes she was demonstrating clashes violently with Anna's realized autonomy.
But the true revelation that follows completely shifts the narrative. It moves it from a perceived ethical failure by Anna to an ethical victory.
It does. Anna reveals the secret truth to the court. Kate had thanked her for filing the lawsuit and explicitly wanted to die. She was seeking permission to stop fighting the unending treatments.
This is a seismic shift. Anna wasn't fighting against her sister.
No.
She was acting on behalf of her sister's desperate wish for dignity and peace.
It changes the moral equation entirely. It reveals that the fight was not between Anna and Kate, but between Sarah's fierce will to preserve life at any cost, and the two sisters' shared desire to control their own bodies and ultimately their own deaths.
And Judge DeSalvo, faced with this new understanding, grants Anna medical emancipation. What was the core legal principle the judge used?
The verdict was surprisingly simple and profound. Judge DeSalvo noted that age was less important than the basic rule that you don't take something away from someone without asking permission.
He upheld the principle of self-determination.
He did. He recognized that Anna, though a minor, had a fundamental right to refuse to be used as a medical resource against her will.
The victory is so short-lived, however. Almost immediately after the hearing, the sources describe a devastating car accident.
The irony is just crushing. Anna, Campbell, and Judge are driving away from the courthouse in the rain, having just achieved autonomy when they are struck by another vehicle.
And Anna suffers a severe closed head injury.
The sources detail the agonizing moment. Brian, the firefighter and paramedic, is called to the scene. The man who runs toward every crisis is suddenly confronted with his own daughter in the wreckage.
He is forced to perform CPR and intubate his own child, struggling desperately to maintain his professional composure while watching his daughter die.
The scene is depicted with visceral horror as he yells, "It's Anna! Paulie, it's Anna!" The professional distance he usually maintains just shatters entirely in that moment.
And this is the ultimate tragic irony. Anna fought for years to prevent the physical sacrifice demanded by her life,
only to fulfill her intended purpose through her death.
Anna dies from the head trauma. The sources detail the final scene where Brian, Sarah, and Red watch as the respirator is turned off. And Anna's organs, the very things she fought to keep, are used for Kate and others.
Completing her intended purpose, but only through the profound loss of her own life.
Sarah's grief encapsulates the entire paradox of Anna's existence and her tragic end.
Her heartbroken realization captures the conditional expectation she had always placed on Anna. She sobs, "I turn, bury my face against his chest." But she wasn't supposed to.
She wasn't supposed to die.
She was only supposed to be the source of life for Kate. She was supposed to remain intact, always ready for the next donation.
It's a moment of devastating clarity, where Sarah realizes that her fierce love for one child inadvertently defined and ultimately ended the life of the other.
And this sacrifice fundamentally reshaped the Fitzgeralds in the years that followed. The sources give us a glimpse of their legacy and loss years later.
Brian, the silent moral witness, he retreats back to his astronomer hobby.
He finds solace in the stars. He traces Anna's profile, her wink, back into the constellation she was named after, Andromeda. It's his way of ensuring she is remembered not as a donor, but as an eternal, beautiful sacrifice.
He finally sees her fully, not as the sister, but as the daughter chained to the crisis.
He does. And Jesse, the delinquent who sought attention through destruction, he finds a path toward redemption.
His antisocial behavior eventually gives way to a search for a constructive purpose. He graduates from the police academy and earns a citation.
He finds a way to matter to the world outside the shadow of his sister's illness, demonstrating that he finally overcame his feeling of utter powerlessness.
And Kate. The sister Anna fought so hard for, she receives the organs, and it's implied this saved her life. But she carries this profound burden of that survival.
She struggles intensely with her post-disease identity. When she looks at old photos, she realizes, I don't remember being her. The healthy younger girl before the illness defined their lives.
So she survived.
But she is haunted by the knowledge of what her survival cost. Her life is now inextricably linked to the death of her sister, forcing her into a new conditional existence, one defined by grief and debt.
And what about Campbell and Julia? The attorneys who found their passion and connection rekindled during the high heat of the trial.
Their relationship ultimately failed as well. The sources suggest that Anna lingered in the spaces between the words, like the smell of something burning.
The trauma, the tragedy, and the ethical compromises they witnessed were just too profound.
Anna's presence, even in her absence, made moving on impossible, sealing the fate of everyone involved in the case.
So we return to our central tension, the core question of this deep dive. Anna fought for the right to control her body during her life, rejecting the continuous sacrifice demanded of her. Yet in the end, she fulfilled her intended purpose through death. Was the ultimate unplanned sacrifice through death, where she was no longer able to choose, more profound than the continuous sacrifice demanded of her life.
The sources really compel us to examine the very definition of free will within a family unit that's facing a crisis. Every single character in the Fitzgerald family felt invisible or defined by that crisis.
From Jesse acting out,
to Campbell hiding his epilepsy, to Anna fighting for her own life narrative. Even when Anna fought for her freedom, she couldn't escape the reason for her existence. Her autonomy was only fully recognized when her life ended.
That is the ultimate bitter lesson here. We see how the fierce desire to preserve one child's life led the parents to completely compromise their own ethical compass regarding the other. They confused unconditional love with conditional expectation.
And this raises an important question for all of us, something to sit with long after this deep dive ends. When does the desire to preserve life inadvertently destroy the very definition of a life worth living?
The Fitzgeralds needed a savior sibling, but they failed to recognize that the savior needed a life of her own.
And the sources reveal the catastrophic results of confusing need with love.
So a final thought for you to carry away from this. Where in your own life do you place expectations on others, especially those closest to you, that require them to sacrifice their own identity or autonomy to fulfill your needs? Are you asking them to be the collection of recessive genes that fits your life plan, or are you allowing them the autonomy to be their own constellation, free from the chains of sacrifice?
Think about the expectations you carry and the conditional existence you might unknowingly impose on someone you love. That is the lingering echo of sacrifice this family story leaves us with.